Awesome, there we go. Alright, guys, well, this is a live chat with Dylan Sessler. I'll first start with me a little bit here. I founded Cognizant Clay to raise awareness for people with disabilities and just inclusivity in the community. And it's taken a while to start, but I'm really glad I did because as a person living with a disability, it's getting better, but I feel like there is still room for improvement. And so, in doing this, I hope to raise awareness and get people's stories out there, not just disabled people, but just people in general who work with people with disabilities, charities, awareness groups, whatever it is. And so, I feel very proud of myself that I did this. And for Dylan Sessler's sake, I actually met Dylan through a group with Gary Vee. It's called First in Line with Gary Vee, and that's a forum for people to share their stories, what they're doing, and just to get people's names out there. And Gary Vee is a very good cause for that. He's always for getting people's names out there. So without further ado, let me just bring Dylan in here, and hope you guys enjoy it. Jeopardy music.
Can you hear
Dylan,
me?
going.
What's up, man? Good to
Not a
see
whole
you.
lot. Just hanging out. It's finally a nice day out, so I filmed my little intro there outside, but it's so damn
Saw
windy
that.
that I can't really film it outside, so here we are.
How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good, man. Just enjoying the weather.
Yeah, it's nice out there. Yeah, well, thank you for doing this. This is a hell of an idea. I'm jacked to be live for once.
This is awesome.
Yeah, so, well, as I said, we met through Gary Vee's group, and, you know, the whole our stories are very different, but I feel like our perspectives are very similar.
Right.
And maybe if you just want to talk a little bit about your cause just to start off, just so people know.
Absolutely. I mean, like my story's it's long. I could throw so much at people, but you know, what really brought me to this point in my life was one, the suicide of my father at 6 years old. So Um, what what came of that was just a lifetime of internal adversity, right? Like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and there was a number of other things that um, you know, brought that even further along than where my situation with my father left me. Um, and in about March of 2015, all of that came to a head, and I almost committed suicide. And that moment transformed my life completely, and it brought me to this understanding that I needed to change. And I took that initiative, and I took that moment as just this powerful place to develop myself, and then also take my experiences and offer a way forward. So eventually it got to this point where I'm at now, where I have overcome anxiety, I've overcome depression, I've overcome suicidal ideation, I've overcome PTSD, I've overcome like just so many different things that have happened within me, that I'm here to help other people, and that's my cause, right? Like I am 100% dedicating my life to giving people, the opportunity to overcome what's inside them. And that's why I'm here, right? Like I could go on for hours about this, right? I wrote a whole book about it, but that's why I'm here, like without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's, I think, very similar to my cause in the sense that we don't want people to pity us. We don't want the attention in that light. What we want is to bring people's stories to the forefront and, help them. Like, whether you're disabled, whether you're able-bodied, everybody goes through that mental health struggle, whether it's 5 minutes a day, several hours a day, whatever it is. I think I think it's really hard to get through that. But as you say, once you eventually accept your flaws and yeah, I am, and pardon my language, but yeah, I am fucked up, but I can get better. I can fix that. And that is major for me. And I think that's what brought us together is, that perspective is very similar and it's good to learn from it. And
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I watched you. The funny thing was, is like the first time I watched you, when I watched you on Gary Vee, I was just like, the first thing that Gary said was like, I think he said like, I'm sorry he said, I'm sorry. And I'm like within me, like, I fucking hate that, like when I talk about my dad, people are like, I'm sorry about your father. And it's like, I don't need your fucking apology, and like, I internalize that because I know what their goals are and I know what they're trying to do. And they just don't know what to say. And I understand that. But within it's like, I hate it. I hate it. It's the one thing that I just do not like people saying. And but I understand it. I've had to take a step back and understand that, it like they don't know what to say and it's up to me to help them understand. And like when you started talking after that moment, it was just like this guy gets it. Like me and him, I know,
yeah,
right? And then when you posted in the group, I was just like, this is a great chance to just connect with this guy because like I know that he has the same mindset as me, and I need to connect with someone like this. This is awesome.
exactly. And I think the feeling is mutual, but I think he was more testing me than he actually does feel sorry. You know what I mean? Like he's a guy that
Sure. Yeah.
I think he was testing the waters to see, okay, what is this guy about? Is this guy
Yep.
doing this for attention or is he doing it for a cause? I'm not
Right.
sure if that's true, but I think coming from him, that's probably what it
It-
was. And I get that all the time. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you didn't
right.
mutate my genes, or in your case, you didn't kill my dad.
Right.
He decided to take his own life, and yeah, it sucks. It's terrible, but at the end of the day, what am I going to do about it? I can't change
Right.
it. And like you said, it took you, God, 20 something years to realize that. But once you realize it, you're like, oh my God, that this isn't that bad. My life isn't that bad. And I think even me, like I got diagnosed at 9 months, but at 8 years old, my mom put a manual wheelchair in the corner of the room. She didn't say, "Oh, you're going to be in a wheelchair," but I saw that wheelchair every day for well, it was 2005 that I was in the chair permanently. So for 5 years, every single day, I saw that chair. I realized it was going to happen eventually, whether I was told it or not. And in my subconscious, it was like, okay, cool, whatever. Like, what are you going to do about it? I'm still living. I'm very grateful for
Right.
what I've done and who I have in my life. And
Yeah. I mean, it's. Oh,
I
keep
think
going. Keep
that's
going.
very powerful for sure.
Right. It's like this. For me, it was that moment of putting a gun to my head. It was like I have a choice, right? Like I can sit here and think about being a burden and being worthless and being, everything that my father probably thought he was. And I can become that, right? Or I can sit here, I can understand what happened to me, I can understand that what I went through, I can understand what he went through, and I can look at a solution to overcoming whatever is in front of me. And the only way I'm going to do that is to learn. And that's what I did, right? Like, I don't think we really even talked about this too much, but it was like from that moment on, I just, I isolated myself within this like cocoon of, I read everything that I could. I listened to everything I could that was positive, right? Like I read like 20 or 30 books within that first year. I read I listened to audiobooks, I listened to podcasts, I listened to motivational YouTube videos for like 15 hours a day until I slept. I woke up and I'd start over the process because I knew one, I didn't have the power mentally to maintain the positivity. So I forced myself to just consume whatever I could that was positive and just hammer it in, right? Like if I couldn't, if I didn't have the base layer of positivity, I would force it to be there. And that's what I
Right.
did, right? Like, I had to, you were kind of, I would even say that you were kind of lucky that it was just like, you didn't have a choice, right? Like you had to make, your solution was there. Like you didn't have, like, you didn't have the solution of like trying to not be disabled or be disabled. Like you had to make the choice to be disabled and you didn't have any other choice. Like it kind of jealous, right? Like, because I had to go through
Yeah, I get that.
this, right? This like completely different idea of like, I have to face what, the negativity that I constantly give myself, or I have to work my ass off to be positive. And it was just, it was daunting. But if I didn't, that moment in my life was the kickstart to everything that has brought me here.
Yeah, and it's just like I don't know. It's I get what you mean by jealous, and a lot of people might think, "Oh, what an asshole for saying that." But it's like, no,
Right.
it's you have one choice and one choice only. I could have chose to be negative though. There's the two choices between, "Oh my God, screw this. Oh, woe is me. This sucks." Or I could say, "You know what? I can use this life experience and teach people that there's so many things that I have done that able-bodied people would never have been able to, and that is what I'm grateful for, is my perspective is so different. Like I
Right.
love sports, I love activities like that, and I can only watch them. So from my perspective, it's way different than being able to try it. And I beat myself up for so many years saying, "Oh God, I can't play hockey. Oh, this sucks." Like, but there's more to that. You can be a coach, and a coach runs the whole team. There's more than just one perspective of being a player. And I think a lot of people gravitate towards me because of that, because I'm so passionate about it. And I don't think I'd be as passionate if I was able bodied. I could be wrong, but I think my
Right.
my intunement with emotions is second to none. And I love that about myself because I'm not afraid to cry. I'm not afraid to, yell my feelings out. And I think we had discussed before that the longer you hold these feelings in, the longer it's going to take to get over it, and B, the harder it's going to be positive.
Right, dude. Yeah. I mean, like that, like we did have that whole discussion, and like I want to go back a little bit to what you said, like talking about like jealousy, like, like you kind of just laid it out, right? Like, people could think I'm an asshole for being, being jealous of you for having no choices. But at the same time, like I can guarantee that you had like an enormous amount of jealousy for everybody else in the world that could actually do things. And like it goes both ways. Like that's just the reality of the situation. People can think like you or I are assholes for being jealous, but that's the reality. And I think people get stuck so much in their like ideas of focusing on just what they see. And that's where like you and I are very, very similar, is that we don't. We very much take a step back. We very much consider everything around us because we've had to our whole lives, right? Like we've been in that situation where we were jealous of everything around us. We were jealous of people that had dads or people that were, able-bodied. Like we just were, we like, and this is where like people should be probably jealous of us, is that we were forced to be considerate, right? Like we didn't have a choice. Like we learned empathy the fucking hard way.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like I don't know, like to me, like that's where I think I have, probably you and me probably think this is like we have this gift of empathy. And like my whole life has always been like, how do I help other people see that? And
Absolutely.
that's like the biggest question in my life, is just like, how do I help people see empathy? And that's, I get like, what do you think?
Well, I think it's hard to just show someone to have empathy, but like you said, for 15 hours a day when you were depressed, you were watching motivational speeches and just motivational positive content. I think the more people do that, the more they can get it, but I think it has to really, really start at a young age because I had talked about that in my post a few weeks ago. I volunteered with children for the 4 years of high school, and I feel like them seeing that I'm normal, so to speak, really taught them that, okay, anybody can be empathetic as long as they see examples of it. And I'm so grateful that I was able to teach those few hundred children that, okay, I am normal. And it just because you see somebody in a wheelchair doesn't mean, oh, pity them. Pitying to me is the opposite of empathy because you're not getting on their level. And it's
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people it sounds really weird to say get down to their level, but it's so true. It is the truest thing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those kids didn't get it. Like the first year I was doing it, they'd come up to me and be like, "Are you a robot?" Like, but I loved it
Jesus.
because it was like, no, I'm a person like you. Just because I'm sitting in a wheelchair doesn't mean I'm some kind of, cyborg. It's just what gets me around. Oh, okay. And then once that happened, they just all accepted me. And I had kids, I didn't even know their names that weren't even in the program that were friends of these kids coming up to me and saying, you're awesome or whatever. And it was like, you know what? Thank you, but I don't want it to get to my head. I'd rather be awesome for what I do for other people than my own self. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No kidding. Like I just put up a video on TikTok, and some of my TikTok followers are actually are watching right now. I just put up a video a couple days ago about like that feeling exactly, because I've gotten up to, as of today, I'm up to like 7,000 like 200 followers. I gained like 1,000 followers in a day. You know, like yesterday, I put up a video that got 26,000 views in 24 hours, and I'm just like, I don't want to be, I don't want to be seen, or like I don't want to be like I'm not doing this for the attention of like
Right.
I need people's opinions of me to be high. Like that's not what it's like, and like you and me understand that. Like I am doing this for attention, but the attention is purely so that other people can be helped from it. 100%. Like,
Yeah.
and I put up a video about this, like talking about it. Like I literally am inspired by the people that follow me and tell me like you're doing a good job. And man, like I know that they're telling me that because they needed whatever I said to them. And that's why I do it. That's what inspires me. And I have no doubt it's the same thing for you.
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of times too is I'll be out in public on the freaking bus or something and someone's like, "Oh, you're inspiring." What? I'm sitting on the bus just like you. I'm existing like you are. I'm not inspiring just because I'm in a wheelchair doing the shit that everybody does on a daily basis. Like, thank you. Like, it feels so awkward because it's like, well, I've done inspiring things, sure, but this is not one of them. And I've had people disagree, and that's how you feel. It still means something to me that you think I am, but like you say about the followers, like I only have a few hundred, and I'm probably going to get on TikTok this week because I finally have a free week. But it's not because I want more people for my own benefit. I want people to see the people's stories that I'm telling, and these interviews have been amazing. Like I love them. But it's also hard work. I find I'm very, I'm really run down in terms of energy, but I'm
Yep.
using it for something that means something to somebody.
Yep.
And if that's what it takes, then it's worth it in the end. Like you were saying, you're constantly creating things on TikTok and whatever it is, and being able to do that, I think is huge, especially right now.
Yeah.
Like so many
Oh
people
yeah.
are so negative through this pandemic, and it's like I understand you're struggling and it's hard, but you realize there's free courses online. There's things you can be doing that benefit you. This is the only time in our lives probably that we will have the free time to do whatever we want.
Right. Oh my
And
God.
that's
Like
just
that,
it.
nothing more true has ever been said about this pandemic. Is like this is probably the one time in our lives, the one time in this like century that everybody, well, every non-essential worker that's out there is going to have that time. And it's just so incredible that people are so hyper focused on being negative. And man, that's just awesome that you said that. Like, like talking about being like creating, right? Like I feel you, man. Like there's been days where, I put out a video probably a week ago. Like I literally read through one of my paragraphs in my book. It from one of the most emotional chapters I've ever written in my life. Um, and it was literally talking about the day that I put a gun to my head. And it was, man, like that the emotion that comes out of just reading that, like I don't know how I got that, 1 minute of reading out without crying for one of those moments, but I did it. And then like I'm sitting there just crying tears of joy because of what I just wrote was true, right? Like that I chose to live. And it was just like, man, like it takes a lot out of me, right? Like, and I'm, like, I mean, like, man, like just making one minute video can just take out so much emotional energy. Um, it's real, and I'm putting it up, and I'm just trying to give people that understanding that like there there's more to life than just choosing to be depressed or choosing to be anxious or PTSD or suicide. Like it's if you want to make a difference with yourself, like you need to make a choice, right? Like I was at the point in depression that I didn't believe a single word that people said was like, you can overcome this. Like I could not believe that. And having gone through it, like you have to make the choice within. Like I can't tell you that you can overcome it. Like you have to tell yourself that you can overcome it before you can even take the first step. Because there's so
Exactly.
many I mean there's so many times that I was like, you know what, I'll give therapy a
Oh, you're lagging a bit there.
it's 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 a 50-50 road. Like you can have someone empathetic to talk to, but it is 50% you. You have to have the courage to take the action, and you have to believe it. And like there's a lot of people out there that just aren't doing
Yeah, I think so. And you're actually lagging a bit here. I can hear what you're saying, but your video is just like choppy. But just to add to that, I'll bring you back in if I have to, but just to add to that is I was talking about this earlier with my parents is when you're in the moment of being depressed in that dark state, it's so hard to tell yourself that it's going to get better. But I think as soon as you make that choice, no matter how long it takes, it's so worth it in the end. You know what I mean?
Yep. You still got my
Like,
audio, by the way?
yeah, yeah, you're good now.
Okay.
But it's in the moment, it's so hard. And so many of my friends have gone through depression and people of my past that, I'm not, don't necessarily talk to anymore, but it's, they eventually decided, okay, it's time to live my life to the fullest instead of feeling sorry for yourself. And I'm sure there's even days where it's hard for you even now, but what? You can't be perfect all the time. There's no way you're going to be happy 24/7 because it's impossible. It's actually easier to be negative and to be sad than it is to be happy.
See, and I like, maybe I am an exception, right, to this, but I am in a very interesting place in my life. Um, I I am not I have not had a bad day, right? Like even when bad things are happening around me, I have not had a bad day in a year, 2 years, right? Like I am I am calm. Like it's almost eerie because it's even gotten even more calm. Like I there are things like that just do that I do not get bothered by, right? Like the very difficult things that I have dealt with, and even the moments recently that would be troubling for a lot of people. I am calm, man. Like it is incredible. I'm waiting for that bad day. Like it's not coming, right? Like I have come. I feel truly that I have come to this understanding of myself and this like overarching sense of who I am and what I need to focus on. That like even when I start getting negative, instantly realize it and I take that step back. And it's just
Yeah, it's like Zen, right? You feel Zen.
right.
It's like nothing can hurt you, and it's like I think a lot of people like your Invictus Dev group, and Invictus just means unconquerable in Latin, and it's so true. Like once you get to that point, it feels like nothing can stop you. Like you say, I'm sure you're gonna have a bad day eventually, but even me, like through all
Right.
this pandemic, it's like my friends are complaining, and I'm not judging them. I love my friends. I'll sit with you and talk to you. If you're having a bad day, like if anybody's watching this, you included, like just message me, shoot me a video chat on Facebook. Like I'll talk to
Yep.
them all day about it. And just because I'm having a good day doesn't mean someone else is. And I think that that's another part of my interviews is I'm so grateful for like I don't know if you know who Rick Mercer is, but he is such an icon here in Canada. He's a political satirist, and I actually interviewed him for my channel. And I
That's
was so
awesome.
grateful to get him because he's an icon here. Like and
Yeah.
it was crazy because he's able bodied, but he's built his cottage in Newfoundland on the east coast of Canada, completely accessible, and he's totally for that thing. And he also did. He's gay, and he does the speeches to the teenagers that are coming out to show them that you're not the only one. And I think that is another major perspective from the mental health awareness perspective.
Yep.
Like there's nothing wrong with you just because you're depressed.
Right.
Like everybody can be sad. Like I'm sad sometimes, but at the
Right.
end of the day, we're human.
Exactly. There um Alan Watts was I believe he was a clinical psychologist or something of the sort, or like I know he was a professor at one point. Um, talks about something like this, like there's darkness and there's light within each of us, right? Like, and we struggle with both, um, and to really understand what the light can be, you have to struggle with the darkness to see it. And I think it's just so profound, and it like really it made an impact on me because it obviously kind of helped me define my book, and my book is going to be called Defy the Darkness. It doesn't negate it, right? It doesn't negate it that it exists. It does exist, and we have to take that that crusade to really take a stand and fight what we are dealing with within the darkness and move forward with it, no matter what it is, right? Like regardless of what it is, more than likely it's something that isn't far off from normal. There's always exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, for millions of people out there who are struggling with depression, it's normal, right? Like everyone has those feelings. It's the power that we give to those feelings by consistently repeating them and repeating them and repeating them and allowing them to just build to this point, because we couldn't hold ourselves back from building that cycle. And there's
Yeah,
obviously
for sure.
you're right, and there's obviously moments that are going to force that, right? Like my dad's suicide. was a moment that I didn't have any control over. And it forced me to face that darkness a lot sooner. At 6 years old, then, I had no understanding of what that meant at that point. And dealing with that throughout my life was simply like, I was unequipped. I had no understanding of what happened. I was unequipped to understand the the timing of it, or the emotions behind it, or like the reason why he chose that, right? Like, I had no idea. And what it really took was understanding, equipping myself, and forcing myself to take a step into what that darkness really looked like for me, and understanding where the habits came from. The not only like the physical habits of like what brought me to negative points and choices, but also like the mental repetition of negative comments of worthlessness and I'm a burden and all of these, all of these difficult things. It was forcing me to recognize those and to comprehend what I was doing to myself. And that's what my book is about, right? Like, Defy the Darkness is 100% focused on helping everyone, find their own path to overcoming their adversity. And that's what it focuses on.
Yeah, and that's my dad's actually watching. He just commented. He said like his brother in 1980, when he was 16 years old, committed suicide because he was just in so much debt and just sick of it. So it is a selfish thing, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's a selfish thing to do it because you're letting so many people down, but at the same time, it's when you make that choice, that's it. Like I don't know what else to say. It's terrible, but it happens. And I think even now there's such a stigma behind mental health that shouldn't be there. It really shouldn't. Like, I don't know what your perspective is on that part.
Yeah, I mean, two things. One, suicide is selfish, but I want to add to that because I think it's really important. Suicide is selfish, but at the same time, it's also selfless, right? And that's not a popular opinion. And most people are going to be like, what do you mean, right? Like, but look at it this way, right? My father was an alcoholic. He struggled with drugs. He was addicted to tobacco, severely depressed and bipolar, like all of these very difficult things, right? And I want you to, here's empathy for you. I want you to put yourself in his shoes. It is selfish, right? To choose suicide over all of that. But look at what he was facing and look at what he was doing to his family, right? He had a 6-year-old boy, a 10-year-old girl, and a wife. And his decision, I believe this 100% in my heart, that his decision was selfless, that he wanted to choose to give his family a better path. That was his choice. He, like, what I think suicide really is selfless, but it's stuck, right? It's stuck in between. Is that, like, I've been there. I've been to the point of putting a gun to my head and understanding that, like, when I was there, I wasn't doing it because I was being selfish, because I wanted the pain to end. I wanted other people's pain dealing with me to end, because I knew how emotional I was. I knew how difficult it was to work with me or help me, right? Like, I didn't give anybody any easy ways to help me. Like, I struggled with it alone and I didn't allow people to help me. So it was like, I've always believed that, and it's so hard to explain to people. I'm trying to do my best here, but I think it's really important to understand that when people think about committing suicide, they are not doing it with any kind of selfish intent. In fact, it's the complete opposite. I think they are, for the majority of people out there, they are doing it because they are trying to be the selfless, like, more or less hero of their own story. And, it's a really radical and different perspective from what most people have ever heard, right? Like, most people understand that suicide is selfish, right? because that's what's explained. And, like church, like think about church, like the Christian church, majority of denominations believe that suicide is a sin. So like you have to like think about that, right? And that's how I learned growing up. And, part of that was actually a part of my story. So it's the stigma within mental health itself is really like it's partly misunderstood because there are perspectives that aren't understood themselves, right? Like suicide has the potential to be selfless, and people just don't bring it up and talk about it in front of the world.
Yeah, and I think that I never actually thought of it that way, but I think you're absolutely right because, like we were talking about before, in the moment of depression, you're not thinking rationally. You're thinking you're terrible. You're like deplorable. You're what's the word I'm looking for is just temporary. And I think it's really,
Irrational.
yeah, like it's just really you're disposable. That's the word I'm thinking of. I
Yes.
think when you're that dark in that dark of a headspace, you think you're disposable. You think you're just a burden on everybody in your life. And I agree with what you said, is it's not being selfish in the exact definition of the word. I think it's a lot deeper. And even like even when my dad's brother's name was Claude. When my uncle Claude committed suicide, God, 1980, there was barely any awareness for mental health even 30 years ago. 30, 40 years ago. Well, I guess it's 40 years ago now. My math is a little screwed up there, but there wasn't much about it back then. And even now, there's still, like you said, a lot of the science is unanswered. They don't know exactly, they may know the causes of it, but it's so new. I just think it's so new that they're still figuring stuff out about it.
Right, because sometimes the science doesn't match up neatly with the human perspective of it. Like there's so much data out there at this point. Like we can connect a lot of things, but there's moments in life that just cannot be connected to data neatly, right? Like we just don't have the algorithms to understand what suicide really is and where it comes from and why it is what it is. And that's why I think it's just so hard for the world to understand. Like there's people out there that do understand it. Obviously the people with lived experience like myself and people that have been to the deepest and darkest places that they've ever been. But the people that maybe haven't dealt with adversity throughout their lives and then all of a sudden find this moment of darkness all of a sudden, maybe don't understand what it really means to be to remain alive. And they don't, they've always thought of suicide as selfish, and they lose someone to suicide and they just have no idea, right? Like I think there's science that's there that can help us, but at the same time, like we need the human understanding of it to match the science to really get the message across.
Yeah, and I think that's so true because like I was even talking to I can relate it a little bit to my condition as my doctor I was talking to. I actually interviewed my specialist for muscular dystrophy the other day for my channel, and he was saying like 30 years ago, the people with your disability were dying at 18 years old, and now you have people living into their 50s. He goes, in 30 years, we've doubled the lifespan of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And he goes in the 70s, if they would have said, oh, we've discovered all we can about cancer, that's it. Well, what's the point of stopping? You know what I mean? It's like you're constantly finding answers to different solutions, and it's not even focusing on one thing. It's just being diligent in the little things to take the
Right.
steps forward. And there's so many people, like I said, like you see it every day. Like I think there's like thousands upon thousands of veterans just in the United States killing themselves every day.
Yep.
which clearly means it's still not fixed. If it was fixed, the numbers would be staggeringly lower.
Right.
Like, is there what kind of like counseling and stuff did you get any as like throughout the years, or was it more self-induced?
So I was given grief counseling as a child, but I just wouldn't talk.
Right.
I wouldn't open up, and again, it goes back to that choice. It will help some people. So it will help some children. It will help some adults. But at the same time, right, like it won't help some people, right? It is 100% situational. Um, and, my sister came out a lot different than I did compared to, we went through the same thing, different ages, different people. And we came out a lot different, but, I also tried therapy into high school. Again, I wouldn't talk, right? Like there's so much to be said for therapy and the benefits of therapy, but I think one of the best therapy that you can get is someone that is just empathetic to you. It doesn't need to be a therapist. It just needs to be someone that's empathetic towards you. They don't need to understand what's going on. They just need there just needs to be a path to expression. And like that's what worked for me, but it's also what I've seen work for so many other people in the past. Because of what I've been through and the nature of it, we talked about this before, but it just gives me the ability to see when people are struggling. It gives me give me 5 minutes with someone and a decent conversation, and I'll be able to tell more or less like if you're struggling with something, because it's just like I've been there. I know what that feels like, and I know why you're acting that way. And I've seen 100 people do this like you, right? Like I know why you're angry. I know why you're being short, or like it's that those simple cues of being observant and listening, that really exposes people. Like I can't tell you how many times I've simply just said like, "How are you today?" And I get an answer of like, "Doing all right," and I can tell instantly, and I'm just like, "Really? Like, are you sure?" And then the floodgates open, right? It's just that little bit extra of like, are you sure you're all right? And it just like people explode, right? Like and expose the difficulties that their lives have placed upon them. And it's just so incredible to have that ability, and it can't be overstated, of the ability for just a person to listen and be empathetic towards another.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people I know that have tried it don't like it because it's too scientific. Now, there are
Yeah,
therapists out there that do practice empathy, but I think a lot of them it's so to the science that it's
yeah,
very hard to relate. It's almost like you're talking to an AI because it's like, okay, you can give me all the advice you want, but like you say, a conversation that's filled with empathy, I think does a lot more than some professional with I put parentheses around that, just basically not telling you what to do, but you know what I mean. It's like it's just it's not for everybody, and I think it's a shame that a lot of people don't get the answers they want, but like you say, you have to have the self-awareness to be able to get through it. Like I would never say I was never as dark of a place as you were, but I would just go home and be upset with being disabled, and I'd be like, oh, well, everybody hates me or whatever. And even in high school specifically, I was friends with the grade lower than me because the kids in that grade just related to me better, whereas the ones in my grade, like, I thought I was a loser because no one was talking to me in high school, but it was like, you know what? I'm not a loser. I'm my own self. And stop letting other people's opinions of you bring you down because at the end of the day, who cares what they think? Like in from grade 10 on, I ate with the teachers. And I'm actually so grateful that I ate with the teachers every day because it taught me maturity. Like it's
Right.
so clicky in high school. It's terrible. Like so many people say, "Oh, I hated it." I didn't hate
Yep.
high school, but what I hated was the clickiness and the, it's very, it's just so you're not going to be that person for long. Like every year in high school, you're a
Right.
different person. Grade 9, I thought I wanted to be a zoologist. Grade 10, I thought I wanted to take sports management. Grade 11, I finally discovered, you know what, I like writing. English is my shit. Like this is what I want to do. But it's the adults taught me empathy way more than the stupid teenagers did. Like we were all stupid when we were teenagers,
It's
right?
true. It's 100% true, right? Like, and that's like I have this same kind of struggle with my son already, right? Like he did something wrong a week or two ago and just like closed off. And I'm just like, why are you doing that, right? Like, why won't you talk to me? A week ago, you would have told me what was going on. Why aren't you telling me now? And through my own kind of understanding, I was like, it got to the point where he explained to me that the kids, you know, the other kids around him, and keep in mind he's 8, right? This is already happening at 8 years old. The other kids around him have told him that crying isn't cool and talking isn't cool, and I'm just like, those kids don't know what the hell they're doing, right? They have no idea. And I didn't swear at them, but I was like, like they don't have a clue. They don't know what's going on, right? Like, and you know, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but me and my son have talked about my dad's death, and we've had the discussion about what he chose, because he's always asked about it, right? Like, so I'm honest with him, because that's what helped me the most as a kid, was being honest. So I've talked to him about that, and I had to explain it to him again. Like, my dad chose suicide because he wouldn't talk to people. So are the kids wrong, or am I right? Like, and I'm not necessarily right or wrong, but this is what happened to my father. And, explaining that to him, like, helped him open up. And I'm not saying it's going to keep him opening up, and I'm not going to leverage my dad against him every time he doesn't talk to me. But I knew that in that moment, he was really set on the kids were right. And I helped him understand that, like, are they really right? And that's what I try and do with my son, is just like help him understand, like, are they right or are they wrong? Like, who is right and who is wrong? And he's starting to understand that nobody's right and nobody's wrong, but the best choice is up to you. And I do my very best to help him understand empathy rather than making these absolute connections to things. But it's just so kids are just so interesting.
It's true, and it's always a popularity contest for a lot of kids, and it's like you speak of mental health, like we're using these platforms for good, but there's so many people that just post a selfie just to see how many likes they can get, and it's like, first of
Right.
all, you're wasting your time because, like, I hate to sound mean, but nobody cares. Nobody
Yep.
cares about that. It's like I hate that. Like Gary Vee, I'll go back to him. He talks about it a lot. He goes, like, he had that little 8-year-old kid on his Tea with Gary Vee the other day, and the
Yep.
kid's like, Gary, how do I get likes? And he's like, first of all, no. He goes, no, it's not
Yep.
about that. He goes, what you need to do is learn and use this platform to get your content out there in the most positive way. It's not like I'm looking right now, oh, 8 watchers. Whatever. Even if it was 1 or 0, I'd be happy. The point is, we're using the platform to talk about awareness for certain issues. And
Yep.
and I think, well, there's another one. My dad says a good lesson is not sheltering children. It's so true. Because if you
Yep.
shelter them, they're just going to go out in the real world and get fired and be
Yep.
devastated. It's like, well, no, the real world sucks. I hate to tell you, but it's terrible. It's really not a nice place sometimes, but
Yeah.
what we can do is just open up and talk to each other. And I'm glad you did that for him, because it's like 8 years old, crying isn't cool. Are you kidding? Like, that's just
Right.
like, no, crying is actually very healthy. So don't listen to them is what I would have said. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, open up. Like you say, your dad, he decided not to open up and he's not here anymore because of it. And
Right.
that's what happened. It pesters into that, but I think it's just really good to talk about everything. Like my mom, she works at the hospital and she's like so good at dealing with the negative in life. Like I was talking to her earlier and she's like, it's a part of life. Like death is a part of life. And she goes, unless someone has experience with it, it's very hard for people to relate. And I think that is so true. Like you need an
100%.
experience of it at a young age. You were 6 years old. Like I could not imagine that.
Right.
Like I really couldn't.
It's, I think we brought this up before, when it was just you and me, like that experience of seeing death at 6 years old was very similar to how you are viewed in terms of disability, right? Like you are on an island as I was. We were on very separate islands and very different islands, but I think the experiences that we both felt were incredibly similar, right? Like you couldn't do certain things, and you had that jealousy of like, I can't do that stuff, right? And it was the same thing for me. Like I had the very very unfortunate feelings all the time of like, imagine seeing a kid and a kid and their dad playing out outside, like playing catch. Like you have no idea how hard it was to just be like, I want to play catch. I know my mom can't do that. My mom's a single mom working her ass off, and I'm sitting here like, I just want to play catch with my dad. And that was like a daily thing for me. And it was a struggle every single day, right? And I would see someone complaining about their dads as I was growing up, and I was just like, the hell, dude, right? Like, and you're probably the same way. Like, you're complaining about like, the coach was running you too hard or something like that at practice. Like, I wish I could do that, right? Like, it was the experiences that we had were incredibly similar, and that's what like is really interesting about us, because we have been on very different paths, but the emotions and the empathy and the experiences that we had were so remarkably similar that I just think that it's so incredible that you and I were able to connect and do this.
Oh, for sure. And it's the other thing that I really struggled with was just, like I said, just telling myself, okay, there's nothing wrong with you. And I thought for so many years that I was screwed up. And it's like, well, yeah, my mom always makes the joke. Like, the running joke in our family is you're fucked up, as in like physically like bent up and whatever. But everybody is. Every single person is. And that,
Yep.
as soon as I realized that as I got older, I was like, you know what? Everybody's got a story to tell, whether there is no normal. I think everybody's weird. Everybody's got their quirks, and
Yep.
that's what really gets me through is the dark humor. Like, make fun of yourself. Like,
Yep.
it actually helps. Like, if you can get to that point, you'll be happier. Like, I think you were saying when we were talking before that, I don't know if it's your wife now that you were
I
talking
was just
about,
thinking about that.
but you said you made a suicide joke, and she was like,
Yep.
"Oh my God, like what? Like, oh, how could you do that?" And it's like, well, because it happened.
Like right before our wedding, I was like, I turned to my wife and I was like, do you think if I said my speech, or if I started my speech off at our wedding with, my dad couldn't make it today, but we're moving on, like, and like she was like, you're insane. And I'm like, I know, it's funny though.
It is funny,
Yeah.
and it's so, but it's true. It happened.
Yeah, I mean it's still funny. Like I I'm the first one to joke about it, because if I'm the first one to joke about it, nobody else can do it and hurt me. It's Eminem in 8 Mile, right? Like it is what it is, right? Like I know what happened, and I'm not afraid to make fun of it under the right circumstances. Obviously, there was feelings a long time ago, but once I overcome them, like it's open, right? Like it's wide open. I even
Oh,
made a
for
joke.
sure.
I made a joke right before this to you. It was great. Running over toes since 2005.
Yeah, running over people circa 2005, and I even sent you the hashtag disabled problems. It's
Right.
like oh man, you should hear my friends and I. Like it is savage. Like
Dude.
I play Xbox. Like that's my like it sounds funny, but that's literally my exercise. I'm not able to get up, so my hands are my
Yep.
main like texting, whatever it is, and video games really help me physically. And but I'm still slow. So when we're playing Call of Duty, like my friends are like you can see on the screen how many meters ahead they are, and they're always like 150 meters ahead of me, and the joke's always like, Clay, like come on, this is a video game. You're already disabled in real life. Why are you so far behind us? And it's like, well, that's just how it is. But, well, I think a lot of people will be like, "Oh, you're mean." It's like, no,
Yep.
it's not. I'm laughing, so what does it matter? Like
You
like
don't understand it.
exactly. Like my buddy Tom the other week went, like we're playing, and I'm like his Alexa was giving him shit, and I was like, Tom, you got to get up and go hit this button. It's like, oh, I'm already sitting down. Sorry, man, I'm too lazy. And I'm like, really, dude? Like, really? But it helps so much. Like, humor
Yep.
is really. I love like dark humor. Like, it really
Because
is the best therapy.
because in its own way, it's a positive, right? Like it's a net positive. Like when you make a joke, laughter, what does it give off? Like serotonin or dopamine or something like that. Like I can't remember what
Yeah,
hormone it gives off from laughter, but um, like that hormone helps you. It's a net positive for your body, and that's like scientifically, if we're going into the science, like that's what helps is being able to laugh, and that's one way to get over the negative side of the shit that we've dealt with, right? Like is laughter. And it's not a surprising thing that that we both like dark humor, and we enjoy doing that.
there you go. See, my dad comment, you loot too much. Yeah, I know I loot too much. I can't open boxes in real life, so I might as well do it in a video game. And then Lessick, my buddy Lessick, is like, loot. I always thought he was looking for a ramp. Like, 'cause that's just what we are. Like, it's funny, and I get so many people like looking at me like I'm insane when I'm in public. Like my buddy Johnny and I, we went to the auto show. No, it was actually at the Jays game last summer, and we're waiting for the elevator, and all these able-bodied people get in front of us, and Johnny literally goes at the top of his lungs, "Don't worry, we'll take the stairs," and everyone's looking like, "Oh God!" Like, but it's great, isn't it? Like, I love it. It's my favorite part about being me is being able to have that self-deprecation because it really helps me get through the day.
Hell yeah, man.
And
Hell yeah.
my mom is the number one dark humorist that I know. Working in a hospital has really, she says, warped her mind because
Yeah.
there's nothing you can't make fun of in life. There really isn't. And
It's
that's,
military is the same way. Like we are terrible. Like, and I would say we take it a step further. I'm sure like hospitals are probably the same, right? Like we talk about death kind of like on another level in the military. Like even some of the jokes that I tell like my wife in terms of like my dad's suicide, they're not that bad when when you go into like military humor. It's just a different environment, right? Like, but at the same time, like you look at that, you look at military, and military is so the nature of the job is like I'm an infantryman. Like my job is literally to kill the guy across from me. That's my job. And if you're not like if you don't have a good reason why you're doing that job, like it's a very, very dark struggle.
Yeah,
And like,
yeah.
there's a quote out there, and I'm probably
Instagram problems. I think it timed out. But anyway, what were you saying there? Being infantry and the humor aspect of it.
yeah, like when you live among monsters, you become a monster, right? Like that's if you really think about it, like the nature of being in the infantry, or even the nature of being in the military itself, is like it's kill or be killed. Like it's going back to nature, right? Like only the strong survive, and if you don't have a mindset of having the ability to be strong, like you end up dying, right? Like it's brutal. And to be in the military, you have to have a brutal mindset. It's it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, and I can't recall the name of the movie, but there's that. I think they were in Kajaki, Afghanistan. The British paratroopers, that one of them stepped on a mine and they realized it was a minefield, and I think eventually five of them ended up dying. And the whole movie, they're getting blown up and they're just joking with each other. Like, oh mate, I can't be a best man anymore. My legs are gone. Like you're like stuff like that. Like it's just like, oh my God, like that's
Yeah,
but that's the nature of the beast, as you say, is it's not only a coping mechanism, it's just how it is.
right.
Like what are you gonna do about it? Like even American Sniper, his book is filled with jokes. Like
Hmm.
they're just constantly making fun of each other, and the whole thing is like a lot of people disagree with it, but he was a Navy SEAL and they hazed each other. And
Hmm.
the whole joke was, well, if you can't be hazed, then you're not fit for this job, because if you get
Right.
offended by being taped to a chair or your head shaved in the middle of the night, then you're fucked. Like I'm sorry, pardon my French again, but it's like you're done. You're not going to make it in that job.
Right. The right hazing is just. I mean, not that I agree with it or disagree with it, but the nature of the job is that if you can't handle that, the what are you going to be? How are you going to act on the battlefield when the enemy does something that they weren't supposed to do, or they weren't allowed? Weren't necessarily like Geneva Convention doesn't matter to some people, right? Like so, yeah. I mean, it's true. Like you really the mindset to be in the military is just completely different than pretty much every other job in the world. Um, so yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Well, and all's fair in love and war is such a true statement. Like you said, my job is to kill the guy across from me, and yeah, that's a dark thing for a lot of people to grasp, but the end of the day, there's some bad people on this planet, but at the same time, there's two sides to every war. The Nazis had families, the
Yep.
British had families, World War II, the Japanese, whatever culture you want to say is that's what the I hate to call it this, but the beautiful part of war is it's like the art of war. I've always wanted to read that book. I've never read it, but there is truly an art about it, and humor happens to be one of the arts.
Hmm.
Like, and that's just how it is. The thing I wanted to know was like I don't know how to word this, but when you were over there in Afghanistan, you had said that when you came back, it's so hard to adapt back to life. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, how is it different? Like, obviously, it's a war-torn country, and
Hmm.
it's just different in terms of geography. But how does it change for you?
So that's a good question because it's been different both times, right? I've been two deployments to Afghanistan, very, very similar places. My first deployment was to Kunar and Kabul. Kunar was the Wild West. Kabul was, the big westernized city in Afghanistan. The second deployment, which was last year, got home in December, was Kabul. So it was very, very similar to the first one, but a very different time in the war. The first deployment, it's interesting because it's this idea of, one, what's normal, and then all of a sudden you go overseas and you see the difficulty of being in a third world country for the people. Then you also see the war itself, right? Like, we got in firefights, and then you also feel different, right? Like, you have to put yourself in this mindset of actually having to kill people, and if you don't, it is, again, it is what it is. If you don't have the capability, you don't have the capability. For me, it was never about me. It was never about actually killing people. It was about protecting the people around me, and that's what mindset I came into. I think that was right for me. Was it right for other people? I don't know. I know that what I wanted was to bring everyone around me home, whether I liked them or not, right? Like, I had difficult moments with each of them, but I wanted to bring everyone home. If that meant, having to kill someone, that's a decision that I had to make within, and I was willing to make that decision. And what you deal with over there is just constant stress. It just really is. It's not necessarily always, death and dying. Like, there were definitely parts of that I saw, and that was difficult for me. But it was just constantly, one, you had to be vigilant, because on base there are Afghans that would kill you if they got the opportunity. That had happened many times around bases in Afghanistan throughout the war. So one, you always have this stress of, like, am I going to be shot in the back by this dude, right? So you're always looking around, and that's what for a year-long deployment, that's what I built, was this understanding that I need to look around everywhere I went. Two, you have the stress of leadership, right? Whether it's good or bad, there's always some kind of stress, and typically, in the military, you almost always seem to deal with bad leadership, whether it's the first level, second level, or beyond, right? There's always something within leadership that you don't agree with, so it feels like bad leadership. So that's always a stress. The mission, everywhere we went, we worried about being blown up. I saw the effects of people being blown up, and it was brutal. That scared the hell out of me. It scared the hell out of everybody, but you still had to do your job, and you still had to focus. So it was you see the tragic part of war, you see the stress of war, the stress of the work, and then all of a sudden you come home, demobbed for 2 weeks in, Indiana, come home, and you're like, none of it exists, right? There's no stress relative, right? There's no one trying to kill you. There's no one trying to blow you up. What you thought stress was before you went to war doesn't really count as stress, right? Like, not getting the TPS reports by Monday is not stress to you anymore. But all of a sudden, this whole different kind of stress comes. The fact that there is no stress becomes stressful. And this idea that, you create something, and I think this is what PTSD felt like for me, is that I created the enemy within my bubble, right? I still felt hyper vigilant. I still felt like I had to observe everything that was going on around me. And if I couldn't control it, I anxiety, right? And I needed to get out. There was a number of times where, when I came home, I went to a bar and I just too many people surrounded me, and I thought I was gonna kill somebody. I just had to leave, and I that happened to me multiple times. So like large groups and crowds, like it just like overwhelms you because you can't look at everything at once, and that's what I felt like I needed to do because I thought I was going to be blown up. So it's like, you almost create stress out of nothing. You know that it doesn't exist, and people tell you all the time, like, dude, like, it's fine, like, nothing's going to happen. But at the same time, the feelings are real because you just went through a whole year of just nothing but stress. So it's just this, like, this compounded habit of needing to focus on stress seems to just overwhelm you again and again and again. So that's like the best way I can explain it. There's obviously like triggers that for different people that, that brings them back to that moment periodically. And I think there's different levels of PTSD. Like I think I had PTSD from dealing with my dad, because just the situation in general. But with war and dealing with PTSD there, it was very much so a purely stress thing. I think I was able to handle the casualties that I saw in my own way. And I don't think I necessarily I've read the book called On Killing is probably one of the most profound books I've read in terms of like PTSD and the struggle of what it is. Like there are people that have killed people, that truly have like another level of PTSD. And it's that mindset, right? Like I believe that if you don't find yourself that mindset, right? Like Chris Kyle had the mindset to protect others, and he killed a lot of people. Was he perfectly sane? Probably not. There were probably difficulties in there, but it was manageable, and he was managing them, and he was doing well. And we all know that story where he was murdered by a Marine, and then there are people that don't have that, I think, don't build that mindset, end up killing someone, and it destroys them, right? Like they don't have the capacity to overcome that PTSD, and it's really, and there's varying levels within that, right? Like from top to bottom, like from the very, very extent of like actually killing someone, and like whether it was with your hands, a knife, a gun, at range. Like I think On Killing is a really good book to understand that. Or if it was just simply like combat stress, where you were like exposed to stress for 12 months, and then you come home to no stress. There's a difference between how you treat those PTSD patients, I think.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to get your perspective. Like, that's insane. Like, and even you explaining it does not do it justice, but
Right.
it's crazy to hear that, because even in his book, you mentioned him, Chris Kyle is like you say, there has been moments where people with PTSD have killed civilians when they come home, and Chris Kyle happened to be one of those victims. Is the guy snapped on the way to a therapy shooting session at a shooting range and shot Chris Kyle and his friend. And it's like, holy shit. Like, he was just trying to help that guy get better, and it ended up costing him his life. And it's, like you say, you went in public places, and it's like, I got to get out of here right now, or else I'm going to snap and kick someone's teeth in, or just lose my shit on them. Because, like you say, you train yourself for a whole year to constantly be looking, okay, that guy could kill me, that guy could kill me. Like, I better have my head on a swivel. And it's probably just so hard to get back home, because, like you say, as weird as it sounds, no stress is stressful, because you're constantly just waiting for something to happen. And like, that's just wild. Like, I don't think anyone can fathom it unless they've experienced it firsthand.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's different. It's just so different from anything you've ever dealt with before. And like the PTSD that I dealt with my dad was just also very different, right? Like it was a moment compared to a whole year. those are, the dealing with combat veterans is just very intricate, because you have to determine, was it one moment? Was it 12 moments? Was it 12 months? Right? Like, and there are so many different levels, it seems, of people that are dealing with PTSD. Like, like I dealt with PTSD at 6 years old unknowingly. And then I lived with it for, about 15 years. And then I went to Afghanistan, came home, and was like told about PTSD. And I'm sitting here like, all of these symptoms are really familiar, right? Like, I'm sitting here like, all of this sounds a lot like my childhood. And I'm like, okay, how do you deal with PTSD before, the military? So it's a whole nother, a friend of mine talked to me about this. People join the military with all sorts of problems, and then they go, they go to training, they go to war, they go to Afghanistan, Iraq, and all of these war zones, and they come out just this bundle of whatever the military forced them into. And you never know what's going to happen on the other side. Like for me, like I dealt with my father's suicide at 6. I was beaten by another dude right after him. I was bullied in high school, and I joined because I wanted to die, right? Like, and all of this came out the other side of the military, other side of my deployments, very different than what I expected, right? Like, and here I am now, just a completely different person than who I was 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes. Is like, well, and a lot of it too. Like, I gravitate towards veterans because a lot of them are disabled, like
Yeah.
in combat, and they were disabled protecting our lives, and that's insane to me because it's like you say, it's not for everybody, but the people that experience it is it's kill or be killed, and that is such a hard thing for people to grasp because, geez, people like hurt an animal, like run over an animal in their car, and it's the end of the world. Like, imagine that was another person and you had no choice. Like,
Right.
that just happened by complete accident. But like you say, like actually being in a war zone, and I think that the stigma. I did see a comment earlier. My buddy Ahmed there, I met him also through Gary Vee, was saying the whole country is in a war zone. And no, I know that. I know the whole country is in a war zone. There's still normalcies in Afghanistan, in Iraq, Iran, Syria, you name it. There still is normal areas, but it's just different, like especially for a foreigner. Like,
Yeah.
like you want to help the Iraqis or the Afghanis, whatever country, and you want to help the innocent people that live there. You don't want them to be in war, but it's a necessary evil, and it's a sad truth, but war is needed, I guess is the word I would use. It's essential, unfortunately.
I yeah, and maybe essential isn't even the right word. It's just, it is, God, that's a hard one, right? Like, it is what it is. Like, it exists. That's the reality of it, is that some people do not agree with you and they're willing to fight you for it. It just exists. Is it essential? If two people believe it is, if two people believe that their ideals are essential, eventually it's going to be a fight. And
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree with that.
and it just is, right? Like, I don't think it's much different than nature, right? Like, if a lion needs to eat, he's going to eat, and he's going to have to kill, right? It's no different than what we do. Like, we are the number one killers on this planet, and people aren't willing to address that. Like, we need to eat, so we kill billions of chickens a day. We kill millions of cows a day to do that. Is it bad? Maybe it is, but we do it, right? Like we kill things, and we are the top predator on the planet, and it just like that's just another like I think we're going down a rabbit hole at this point, but it is what it is, like you know,
I think you saying it is, just the term it is
right?
so true because like my dad's saying again, the necessary evil, which is what I was trying to get at, is it essential? Maybe not. Is it necessary? Unfortunately so. Like there's always someone that wants to kill you, whether it's over race, over oil, over money, whatever it is, and we were also talking about this before, is soldiers are disposable to the governments because it's like ultimately it's a fat guy on a chair that's never been in a war zone that's making your decisions for you, and that's just the way it is. Like it's like, you know, you
Yep.
chose to be in the war and you're over there fighting for whatever it is, freedom, whatever, right? Like it's pretty crazy.
hmm And we
But
each like there's 2.5 million soldiers in the U.S. Army, and we all chose a different reason to join and a different reason to go over. We all choose a different reason to engage in combat. It's some of us do it for money, some of us do it for the college benefits, some of us do it for glory, if that's a reason, and some of us do it because we love the country, right? Like each person has their own reasons, and it's very interesting to see where those reasons end up as we exit the military and start dealing with what the military did to us.
right. Yeah, and that's an important thing. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Like I still don't know that much about war, but I still read up on it as much as I can and try to stay with the times because I've always gravitated towards them. Like there was I don't even remember his name, but when I was in high school, my EA, Tom Dykes, he was from Liverpool, England, and he actually grew up during the war. Like literally bombs were dropping on the city. He was in a bomb shelter with his mother at I think it was 9 months old or even younger. And so he has always gravitated towards veterans. He brought a bunch of World War II veterans to high school when I was in high school. And then he actually brought one of the soldiers who was, I think, a sniper or something to do with long range combat. And he had the shakes from PTSD, like bombs going
Mm-hmm.
off and shit all the time. And his hands were shaking, but he brought him
Right.
in to meet me because he had, I think it wasn't Parkinson's, but it was something similar
Sure.
as a result of all this. And I met him and he gave me his beret. And ever since that day, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do my due diligence to support the troops of the States and Canada. Like, ultimately, we're neighbors, and the States is the most powerful army in the world. I'm thankful for what you guys have done. The whole aspect or reason for going over there from the government's point of view isn't always in the best interest, but unfortunately you as well as many other veterans are you guys are disposable, which sounds so mean to say. Like I feel bad almost saying that, but it's true.
It is. It's true.
Like it's like
Yeah.
life your life is very important to a lot of people, but to some it may be all whatever. Like
My, you'll find this funny. My first platoon, we called ourselves the Expendables. So my first platoon overseas was literally called the Expendables. So it's we know, we 100% know that we are expendable. We are disposable, and that's our job. And that's you have to make do. You have to make come to terms with that in some way, or you're just going to struggle.
Yeah, and I think that that was the main lesson of the Chris Kyle book is I'm not a hero. I'm just doing what he felt like he was put on this earth to do, and he knew he was disposable. Like he lost three of his best friends over there, and it was like,
Yeah.
whatever, that sucks, but they knew that they were disposable, and ultimately everybody is anyway. So what difference does it really make? And the Expendables, I love that, but it's
Yep.
true.
Yep.
Well, I think on that note, we're going down the rabbit hole a little bit. We'll wrap this up right here. Thank you for doing this, Dylan. This was awesome.
It's been great, Clay.
Yeah, you too. We'll definitely get another one going down the line for sure.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too, man. Stay safe.
Later. Yeah, you too.